is Jalen Anthony Rose.
What up, though?
I'm David Jacoby.
And on the cool check-in.
Together with Jalen Jacoby, what is it that we do?
Give the people what they want.
Jalen Rose did not get what he wanted from Monday Night Football. We all know what happened in Wisconsin by now. And a final second kick, the Packers beat the Lions. But all the discussion is about what? The referees and some bad calls that went against Detroit, especially these two on Trey Flowers. Some illegal hands to the head and neck area were called. And the replay showed those hands were not on the head or the neck area. These were two huge calls in the game that led to scores by the Packers, and eventually the Packers win. Now, after the game, Trey Flowers himself discussed the calls. Let's listen to Trey.
They saw something different than what actually happened, and they called what they thought they saw. So, yeah, I actually changed the position of my hand because it was to the chest initially, which is right here. I was doing it all game. I didn't know there was a flag to the chest, so I actually changed it to right here. And he called it again. Yeah.
I love how I finished that. Yeah. Jalen, you're a huge Lions fan. What do you think about those calls?
So, I'm conflicted because I appreciate that my hometown team is now starting to get some national respect for playing really well in big games. Mm-hmm. Moral victory against the Kansas City Chiefs held Patrick Mahomes without a touchdown pass. I was hoping that Monday night game was going to be a breakthrough where we actually not only performed well, but won the game. Mm-hmm. And yes, those couple of calls, when you have a former MVP like Aaron Rodgers and you continue to extend drives, at some point it's going to come back to haunt you. And I really felt bad for Trey Flowers and Coleman and Big Play Slay because they was balling, okay? And so on the first penalty that they called on Flowers, the offensive lineman actually had his hands to Flowers' face.
Yeah.
So, number one, which would have clearly, changed the dynamics of the drive. And then has he acknowledged, not only was he doing it all game, most offensive and defensive linemen are doing it all game. And so, I was really disappointed by the officiating. I do believe extending those drives ultimately cost us the game.
So I agree with you on a few things. I was disappointed with the officiating, and I do believe extending those drives cost the Lions the game. But in a weird way, I'm not disappointed with the referees. When you watch the replays, you see that his hand is not on his head or neck, but in real speed, when you're standing there and you see Bakari's head go all the way back like this, and you throw the flag, I can understand why you throw the flag. I understand why you throw the flag. The problem is the system. There needs to be some sort of checks and balances in place, some sort of 5-10 second review that reviews these type of calls, extra challenges, something that fixes this. Because in real speed, to the naked eye, when things are happening that fast, I understand why they called the flags, but you can quickly see on replay. How long did it take the announcers to tell you? How long did Booker McFarland tell you that that was actually not hands to the face? 5 seconds, 10 seconds? They should change the system so whether it's only in the fourth quarter or only on big plays or some sort of special challenge flag, the rules, the system needs to change. I don't necessarily blame the actual human being that threw the flag.
Well, I disagree with you. Here's why. Because you're right. You and I represent the naked eye. But these are paid professionals that should know the difference between hands to the face and hands to the top of a shoulder pad or to the neck. Let me give you a different example from a different sport that found a way to clean this up. In basketball, players drive to the basket, used to flop their head really back so that the officials would call that. Mm-hmm. At some point, the refs was like, oh, we're going to stop calling that. And you know what players stop doing? Flopping like that. And so when you're an official, I don't need 15,000 replays for them to get it right. Initially, you gotta swallow the whistle, allow the players to decide the game. That's what you have to do. Your job is to protect the players and police, in theory, what's happening out on the field. Not decide the game, extend drives for Aaron Rodgers that ultimately cost my hometown team the game.
Well, we knew it was going to happen at some point, and it happened last night. After all the controversy about the Daryl Morey tweet and the relationship between China and the NBA, we all were kind of waiting for LeBron James to say something, and he did yesterday. Let's listen to King James.
We all talk about this freedom of speech. Yes, we all do have freedom of speech, but at times there are ramifications for the negative that can happen when you're not thinking about others and you're only thinking about yourself. So I don't believe, I don't want to get into a word or sentence feud with Daryl Morey, but I believe he wasn't educated on the situation at hand, and he spoke, and so many people could have been harmed, not only financially but physically, emotionally, spiritually. So just be careful what we tweet and we say and what we do, even though, yes, we do have freedom of speech, but there can be a lot of negative that comes with that too.
There was a bit of fallout from those comments, so LeBron James took to Twitter later and said this: "Let me clear up the confusion. I do not believe there's any consideration for the consequences and ramifications of the tweet. I'm not discussing the substance. Others can talk about that." He went on to say, "My team in this league just went through a difficult week. I think people need to understand what a tweet or statement can do to others, and I believe nobody stopped and considered what would happen. Could have waited a week to send it." Now, Jalen, there's a lot going on here, and I will say that this was not exactly LeBron James' finest moment in front of a microphone or behind his Twitter fingers. Jalen, what is your response to Mr. James' statement and his follow-up tweets?
LeBron James has been one of the more terrific athlete ambassadors that professional sports has seen. But he's not perfect nor flawless. And in that sound, it got exposed because a couple of words that he used is why the firestorm ultimately happened, which is why somebody that's so very articulate in front of a microphone and expressing themselves still had to go to Twitter to clear something up. Just think about that. Normally that happens in reverse. You tweet something, then explain it, not explain and then tweet about it. And here's what it was. He initially talked about the freedom of expression, but then he acknowledged that it's at a cost. He also said that there could be ramifications. And the first example he used was financially. So the reality of it is this. Freedom of speech, as he said, his words, does have a cost. And in this case, it's doing business with China.
It's interesting because he said there can be negative ramifications, but really it's more like with freedom of speech comes a responsibility. And when we uses the word uneducated, like he felt Daryl Morey was uneducated about these things. But one thing I always say is everyone's a hero in their own movie. And I felt like LeBron in this moment was a little too subjective in his view of what happened. He was a little too seeing it through his own prism and not really understanding holistically all of the implications of the tweet and the implications of the conflict between Hong Kong and China. He was basically saying, this affected my life and the people that were with me and my teammates in the NBA that were over there in China. This could have waited a week. Whereas, like, we all know that if you're really fighting for freedom and you're really fighting for justice, waiting a week or not waiting a week is not going to change the ultimate outcome. Do you think that could be true?
Well said. And also, it's not fair to call Daryl uneducated on a topic because 2 words later, you say you didn't speak on it because you didn't feel you had the knowledge of the topic. So that's a contradiction in itself. And the reality of it is, he said it, his words. There is a cost for what you tweet. There could be negative ramifications. And like you just said, that's doing business with China. he wants to make sure that he doesn't do anything to interrupt that relationship.
And there's also a part of this that not people are talking about. It's almost unfair that we put this much pressure on one person. There's this much focus on what LeBron James is going to say. We're all waiting to hear what LeBron has to say. He's just one of 450 players in the NBA. But we always look to him to give us the answers. We always look for him to be perfect, and it's almost unfair. Moving on to baseball that happened last night. Me and Jalen were on the football game, but during commercials, I was checking on the baseball game, hoping I can get some drama like we had in Game 2 between the Astros and Yankees. There was no drama. It was a dominant performance from that man right there, Strasburg, and the Nats, who went on to absolutely wax the Cardinals. Is there any hope for the Cardinals to come back and make this a series?
No hope to make this a series, and we talked about this on yesterday's show. Ace pitching at this time of year trumps all great hitting. I remember when the Arizona Diamondbacks won the World Series and they had Schilling and Randy Johnson. And it seemed like they basically pitched every game throughout their title run. This pitching staff has what it takes to do that. So does the Astros. That's why it's going to be interesting to see if the big bats from the Yankees in that series can overcome that great pitching. But in this series with a 3-0 lead, it's going to be over for the Cards.
Oh, it's over for the Cardinals. And when we come back, we will be joined by Matt Barnes, and we have some really probing questions about the relationship between NBA players and sleep and NBA players and marijuana. Stay tuned for that. Last week, when the Lions were 1-0, what was the word you had for the Lions? What's the word this week?